Are we framed properly? Hi guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Emmanuel is back again. So we're still outside. We're shooting with some bokeh-licious, some delicious bokeh over there. As you can see, the tree behind me. This is not green screen. This is literally me. You can see there is nothing there. So I'm really loving shooting outside because it's minimal setup, and as I've shown you on my previous video, it's amazing to shoot outside. So back again with my Fuji, and then the reason I gave you guys yesterday some of the reason as to why I moved to Fuji from Canon. I used to be, I am still a Canon user. I'm not going to say that I'm going to take the brand out of my sights. Let me just explain how brand perception works. Canon has really globally, I think, Canon has globally established itself in the imaging industry as one of the leading brands, and that is definitely something that cannot be denied. However, in the past couple of years, they've kind of lagged behind other people. They've kind of taken a step back in terms of innovation. Whereas you get brands like Sony who's bringing a lot of innovation and making filmmaking accessible to the masses. One thing, for example, that is not even a matter of innovation. So on my Canon, the one I'm shooting with, the 800D, there is a mini HDMI. On the very expensive Canon 5, R5, there is a micro HDMI. So this HDMI is the one that they're using. Let me put it up. So this is the HDMI that they use. This is the micro HDMI. I'll put it to my face. So this is the micro HDMI. There you have a full-size HDMI. You have Sony that puts this HDMI on all of the cameras, literally all of the cameras that are coming out of from Sony, beside the ZV-1, which are really targeted for vloggers. Yeah, and so this camera came out in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. It has a mini HDMI, which I understand. It's a camera that is primarily targeted to photographer with some video features, which means that for me to use this camera, for example, with a monitor, as I'm doing right now, to view myself on my monitor I have here. So I have a monitor here that allows me to check focus. So there you can see me. To check focus and to check, I use my lights on this, so this is graded with my lights. So for example, for me to use a monitor with a thing like this, I have to use this very flimsy, very bad connector, this mini HDMI, and from there then I can adapt it to my to the full-size HDMI that goes into my camera. I'm actually planning to change this adapter. I'm gonna get the one with the cable. It's a bit more secure, and I'll probably just run the cable around. The issue with this HDMI is that the tension sometimes is from below, so you just have to find a way that the tension is there is no tension at all. So you can see there is a jiggle room. So when you put your HDMI, make sure that you still have like a little bit of a jiggle that allows you to know that there is no tension on your HDMI port. That's out of the way. But let's go back as to why I moved to Fuji. Yesterday I said, or in my previous video, I just said that Fuji now makes sense for photographers and for videographers. For example, with their latest release, the Fuji, some of their latest release, I should say, not the latest, the Fuji XH2S, which is very video-centric camera. It pretty much gives you everything on the camera, be it you have to spend quite a lot of money in terms of storage and in terms of a few things that you can use to make that camera really functional. But with the camera only and the lens, you can get, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with the CF Expert card, you can shoot even ProRes internally. I know you can shoot RAW externally. That's something for sure. If it's not correct, please correct me down below in the comments. The Sony, we can't even talk about Sony because Sony pretty much gives you everything in camera. The battery life is good for Sony. Canon battery life for the R6 is good, but for the I don't know which, let's just talk about Canon for example. I don't know which ports they use on the R6 in terms of video. And there's the R6 Mark II. Let's just look at it. Canon R6, sorry, ports. So we're gonna look at that. It uses a mini HDMI. Imagine a camera that costs quite a fortune. Let me just do that. Let me go. Yeah, it uses a mini HDMI. For a camera of this price, using a mini HDMI is pretty much a crime. I'm sorry, but this is something that Canon really has to fix. And I don't understand why they keep doing this, putting mini HDMI. Just the HDMI scandal. That should just be, because if it's a Canon, that camera is targeted to hybrid shooter, and a hybrid shooter would like to use a monitor, for example. I use a monitor now for pretty much everything. Now I'm using it to check my color grading, my lights. I've put my lights on it so that I'm able to have a quick look as to how my finished product will look like. And I can't, for the sake of me, I cannot understand how, for a camera of that price, you're putting a micro HDMI. Even on my 800D, which I was bashing on my last video, there is a mini HDMI, which is way better. So on the R6 and R5, I don't understand why there is a micro HDMI. If there is something true that I understand, that Canon also makes cinema camera, that they don't want to cannibalize their own brands. Sony also makes cinema camera, but I don't think they are cannibalizing their own brand. They're just giving people proposition at different price points, and that is working for them in terms of their marketing. They're not putting limitation to the creators, and that is something that I think Canon should really. In terms of photos, I feel Canon still has some of the most amazing files to work with, but Fuji is just maybe a little bit of a step ahead. Color science, well, I can't really make much comparison there because color is something that is very subjective. If there is something that I can actually maybe put my input on, yeah, I remove my ND filter because it's getting a little bit dark and I don't need it now. Instead of raising my ISO or anything like that, remove your ND filter. If you don't have an ND filter for your camera, you should get one. Where was I? So I was bashing the HDMI ports on other camera brands. So obviously I also have a mini HDMI port on this camera, but it's not really presenting itself as a problem because this is my first Fuji camera and I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a, let's say, XH2, which is the camera I'm gonna get. Obviously that's the camera I'm planning to get, maybe by September or somewhere there. But this is a good practice camera for me in terms of some of the features that Fuji offers. However, the battery life on this camera is horrendous. Horrible, to say the least. I had to pick up another Fuji battery, and these batteries are very tiny. But for the power consumption, this camera is power hungry, especially if you're using 4K F-Log and stuff like that. Yeah, you won't be able to last with one battery here. You have to charge it all the time. Picked up the second battery. I'm planning to pick up a battery grip just to really have the full capability of this camera, because I also want to do some videos. It's not the focus for this camera, but I want to do some videos. I'm gonna get myself an XH2, not the S, the 2, for video work that I need to be done, because a lot of my video that doesn't involve movement and my clients, it's generally interviews and stuff like that. So big up, I'm gonna stay with this. So what I'm gonna do now, I think I'm just gonna switch to the Fuji and talk about the Fuji on a Fuji, so that you guys have an idea of why I picked up this camera and how it's gonna work in terms of my workflow, and then how I'm gonna integrate it for what I do. So let me switch it on first, and then it's on F-Log and the battery is already blipping there. So I'm going to change the battery. The simple fact that I just kept the camera on, the battery itself, it's a very tiny battery, 1200 milliamp hour. It's not a lot.